Welcome to Foundations for Effective Reporting and our webinar on all things Salesforce reports. Happy to have you guys join, and we've got lots of great information for the next hour or so. So before we kick off into the agenda for today, I'd love to do a quick round of introductions for the amazing individuals I have joining us today. Marina, why don't we start with yourself?
Hey, thanks everybody for joining. My name is Marina Peterson. I'm the Director of Business Systems for the YMCA of San Francisco. Prior to that, I was the Director of Business Systems and Accounting at the JCC of San Francisco. I've been using Salesforce for a number of years now, so quite a while. And I'm excited to be part of this group today, and especially any of the new folks that are out there, to show you one of the things that I find is the most, the biggest features of Salesforce is reporting and dashboards. So I'm looking forward to the conversation we're having with you today, and I'll pass it over to Hong.
Cool. Hi, everybody. I'm Hong Yan. I'm one of the product managers here at Traction Rec. Before that, I was also a Salesforce administrator for many, many years. And also, did a lot of support for community centers and nonprofit organizations before that. So, and definitely, like Marina said, reporting is always something I get asked about every single time. And it's always, one of the reasons why my previous company, we went with Salesforce, was because of the reporting capabilities. It's just so much better than what options we had. So it was really fun to be able to kind of share some of the things new as well that's been happening with reporting. It's not something, it's continuously changing. They're constantly improving it. So very happy to be able to share some of those things with you today.
Amazing. Thanks, Brandon Hong. And hi, everyone. For those of you who I do not know, I am Stephanie Anderson. So I am the Regional VP of Sales at Traction Rec, and I really help our YMCAs and JCCs and other nonprofit organizations in their evaluation of Salesforce. And I echo what Marina and Hong said. The analytics capability of Salesforce is why we as a product company built on this incredible platform. So we're really excited to dive into all things analytics with you all today. So thank you for joining us. Amazing. So before we get into it, a quick agenda here. So to kick it off, we're going to really dive into the foundation of data and reports, and really the language behind reports, dashboards, report types, list views, and really get that foundational knowledge in your hands. Then we will go into a live demonstration with Hong, and he's going to show you what it's like to really build those reports from scratch and start from the beginning. Then we'll get into some reports and dashboards in action and just showing you how some of these are being used across some of our organizations today. And then, of course, we'll wrap up with some Q&A, some conclusions, and some really great resources for you all as it relates to Salesforce reports and dashboards, no matter where you are in your journey with Salesforce. Couple housekeeping rules really briefly. So feel free to pop your questions in the chat as usual. I will monitor that and answer as much as possible. If not, I will redirect to some amazing colleagues. This is, of course, being recorded, so you can share it within your organization, watch it back, because you've got two incredible panelists on the line today, and you're going to learn a ton of knowledge. And then at the end, during the Q&A, feel free to come off of mute, ask your questions live, come off video. We love to see our community's faces and hear their voices. So we hope to keep this really as collaborative as possible. Beautiful. Amazing. So before we get into it, I want to touch on the challenges really briefly as it relates to reporting and analytics. And these are things that you all submitted, and the folks on the line to us before this webinar. And what's really cool is that we've got groups from different kind of stages in their Salesforce journey here. We've got some longtime Traction Rec and Salesforce customers. We've got some who are a bit newer to the platform and still learning. And then we have folks who are just kind of want to learn more better on another CRM. So what's really great is we've got perspectives from 3 different buckets. Now, the first challenge that we heard kind of from everyone, and what I hear in a lot of conversations in my day-to-day with YMCAs and JCCs, is this notion of siloed data making reporting almost impossible, right? Even if you're living in Salesforce and Traction Rec today, you may still have some ancillary tools out there that are not integrated yet that still make that notion of reporting and that cohesive data impossible. And if you're not on Salesforce, you probably have much more living out there, and all of your departments are living in different systems. So really hard to get that unified view. The second challenge we heard was your reports are static. And what that means is if you're not on Salesforce, you probably have data that is not live. It's not real time. So to know if your data and your analytics and reporting are accurate is really hard to trust because it's static data and you've got to constantly update continually. And then the last one, which I love, which we heard as a challenge, is often organizations are putting the reporting duties on just the IT department or the IT manager, which that shouldn't be the case, right? Reporting should be easy and intuitive enough that all of your departments can get the most out of it, right? You want your program directors to run with it. You want your fundraisers to be able to build their own reports and dashboards and really own the system and be able to create these and have fun with it, because Salesforce reporting is actually really fun. I love it. Any other challenges, Marina and Hong, that you're kind of hearing in the ecosystem as it relates to reports and dashboards?
I think you've covered most of them. These are really definitely the big ones there.
Amazing. And thank you, team on the line, for sharing these challenges. And we hope to address as much of this as possible in today's webinar. Beautiful. So let's pass it to Marina for really just understanding the foundations of Salesforce reports. Oh, there goes my dog. Told you it would happen.
Thanks, Steph. Yeah. Again, because this is a mixed group and more of a fundamentals, I wanted to kind of get back to sort of the beginning of the challenges here, and just so that we can get some common language happening. One of the first things that we want to make sure that everybody is aware of is that the new terminology that gets used in Salesforce. Just a couple things to note that for people on the line, that the use of Salesforce and nonprofits worldwide is growing really fast. So knowing these basics is going to be as common as knowing how to use Outlook, Word, Excel, and some of those other tools that we're always using and familiar with. And also building and reading or interpreting reports and dashboards is a core competency you can use at any nonprofit, any for-profit organization that uses Salesforce. So these are transferable knowledge skills that you can use throughout your career. And today, like I said, today we're here to start building that foundation for you. The game changes completely when you start using Salesforce, especially for nonprofits that have been on these legacy systems for a long time. You really need to understand that the rules change, the pieces of the game changes, even the winners change. Everything you thought you knew how to do before is in a different place. It's in a different format. Your muscle memory is way off and you feel really awkward at first. You don't know where things are. How do I find this? It was over here before and now I can't find the same things. And even the terminology changes. So if you're feeling overwhelmed at first, that's okay. This is a big, big change. But the best part about it is now that the rules are up to you. And just like Stephanie mentioned at the beginning, instead of somebody asking IT to, hey, can you run me that report? The best we can do, or the better we can do, is to actually show you how you can run your own reports. And the biggest challenge that everyone faces when using Salesforce is that holy cow moment. When you get in there and instantly you can see way more information than you had in the past. You can click through records, you can get into places and deep holes that you never thought that you were allowed to be in before. And it's overwhelming. It's completely overwhelming at first. But what we're here today is to give you a few starting tips and tricks that'll help you take control and start writing your own rules. So I'm going to go into the terminology, and these are kind of the basic terminology that is listed on the slide here. These are the main ways that you access data in Salesforce. So not entering transactions, but how you actually can see those transactions and see that information. And the first one that we start with usually is called a list view. It looks at a single object. You can edit data in line. You can change sort of how these list views work to make them into kind of more functional and easy to use sort of formats. So things like this are: who checked in today? How much cash and checks are we depositing today? What membership started this week, or who needs to have their documents signed still? So that's a really simple way that you get to a very specific list of information. There's challenges with list views. You're limited to only kind of printing what's on the screen, which isn't very pretty. It doesn't get you the whole picture of things, but it does get you to a very specific set of records and a task that you need to complete pretty quickly. So they're really helpful. And I bring up list views because sometimes people get confused with the list view and then some of the other pieces. So list view, very basic. It's a single view of a set of records. Then you get into reports. Reports are really the basis and foundation of reporting and analytics. Reports gather information from multiple different areas. So people and memberships, or what's another one? Programs, registrations, and families. So when you get into reports, you start having a lot more choices. And this is where you really need to spend some time kind of getting your hands dirty, getting in there, taking some time to poke around. When you think of reports, you can kind of think of along the terms of pivot tables. And a lot of this will become very apparent when Hong does the demo, which I'm very excited for. So I'm going to skip through a lot of this stuff and get to that. But reports are basically your live data, right? So, and the reason why you want to use reports over just exporting things into Excel is because the data is live, it's not static. And anytime that there's an update, that data gets updated right there too. Solves that static reporting issue. Then you get into dashboards. Love dashboards. Dashboards are literally a collection of reports with nice little components called little widgets. They're great for doing things like validation and process consolidation. So you can put a list of reports together on a dashboard. Some of the ones that people have seen before, like Xero Dashboards or billing validation dashboards, all sorts of sort of daily tasks. You can use dashboards for analysis. And you can also deliver dashboards and email to executives. It's the best way to get them the information that they need to see without actually having them touch your system. Another big thing that you want to be aware of is in all of these areas, you can add bookmarks. And bookmarks are a great way to remember where your favorites are. So it's super helpful. And we'll show you how to do this too. Again, with all that information that is at your fingertips, you need a really good way to be able to get to the information that's relevant to you. And you also want to be aware of some limits that happen with reports and dashboards. You know, from that old, I want to see everything right now kind of request for information, we need to kind of narrow that down a bit and start actually, you know, really defining what everything means. And then one other thing about just sort of in this frame here is that reports and dashboards get dusty. You need to go in and you need to update them. Data changes, we add fields or updates happen, or we do things that are better. Salesforce itself, in each release, does some improvements to how reports and dashboards work. And there's always new tools and new tricks. That's part of the fun too. And then the other thing is, how do you even start? Where do you start with building reports? And again, we'll get to this in the demo, but it really comes down to understanding what report types are. And that's your starting place. 80% of your reporting work is done by choosing the right report type. It's from there that you start playing with the groupings and formats and filters and all those other things to narrow that huge amount of data down into a consolidated set that you can do something with. So out of the box, when you turn on Salesforce, and again, for those who haven't used Salesforce or just starting with Salesforce, there are hundreds of report types. It is truly overwhelming where you start with. What I always recommend to people is to create a set of custom report types that you use as your go-to or starting points. And there's a couple tips and tricks we can get into in that later on as well. But this is in collaboration with your Salesforce support team and your admin team. So you both together learn how the data model works and how the data fits together. And there are many ways that you can make your own custom reports look better. So when you have a really long field name that doesn't fit well on a report, in a custom report type, you can make that from registrations from the first of the month, you can make it just registrations. So there's ways you can change those labels. And then when you're building a report, another big thing to start with is actually having a record open that you're looking at. So it could be a registration record or an opportunity or a facility visit so that you yourself can see the information on the page that you're looking to try and get more of, or a lot of related lists or a lot of related records together in a report. It's really helpful so that you can see where the information is and then you can put it together in a report. If you're working at home now and you have big monitors or dual monitors or, bigger than, just a laptop screen, makes that world a lot easier. One other thing I want to mention to this group, the last kind of thing is last week there was an npsp.org summit. Salesforce summits, user conferences, all things like that always have sessions on reporting and dashboards. Go to them. You can never get enough training on reports and dashboards, whether you've been using reports like me for a long time or you're just starting out. It is good to always see what people are doing, how they're doing it. You're to learn some new trick or some aha moment every single time. I think we're going to give you a link to the trailhead from last week's summit as a really good resource to take your knowledge to the next place. But a couple things just to keep in mind or to note here that I learned from that summit, brand new, learned to me, is a report should answer a question, right? When you're trying to build a report, you should have a question in mind that you're trying to answer. And it is a tool to help make decisions and then act upon that information. This is one that I've always gone back to my executives and other people when they've asked for a report. What are you going to do with that information and why? There's voyeur data. I just want to see how things have happened. Great. But we want to turn people into actionable, we want to turn these reports into actionable data. What am I going to do with this? If I see 3 years of membership data, what am I going to do with that for the next 3 years? And the last one that I really like, and I want to do a lot better of this, is when you create a report, you add a title to it. Make your title a headline. This one was really cool. We always kind of label it like AR for accounting and finance, or, membership data for the membership team. Make it something catchy and snappy. Make it fun. Have that headline there so that when you do deliver these reports to someone, they immediately spark their interest. It catches their eye, and then they start engaging in a conversation. Remember, we're trying to use this data to tell our story, and adding a useful and searchable description also helps there so that you understand what that data is that you're looking for and what it's going to do. Like I said, reports help us tell the story and provide our measures of impact, right? The more we can consolidate and create consistent data points and segments, right, which is what we want to get to, the faster we can deliver information to people to act upon instead of reacting to old data, and we might have missed an opportunity. So that's sort of the basics there. I really want to spend as much time with the live demo, and Hong, I'll pass it over to you.
Great, thanks, Marina. That was a lot of very awesome tips there. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen a little bit. We're going to get into Salesforce. But actually, before we do that, Marina brought up a really good point, is that we got to make sure we are asking a question first. Whenever we're doing any report, we got to make sure we know what question we're trying to answer, right? And it's not just a matter of, I can ask for, well, who's coming to my center? That's a very vague question. And so it makes it hard for you to build a report if it's too vague. So we want to know a little bit more, like, what do you mean by who? That's the vague part, right? What does who mean? So I really want to know, I want to know kind of like what kind of age groups are coming to my facility, because I want to make some adjustments to it to make it better for, I want to make sure I'm catering to the ones who are coming, right? So that helps you kind of make sure you're asking the right question. So we're going to take that question. We're going to see how we're going to build a report from that. All right, I'm sharing my screen now. So just let me know if you see a Salesforce screen. We're looking good. Okay. So here I'm starting just from a record. And like I said, my question was who's coming to my center and kind of like what are their age groups, right? So I can figure out all that information. So usually when I start with a report, I'm not looking at the report, I'm looking at a record, because that's where my data is, and it lets me validate some of the things I want to do, right? And the first question I want to validate is, can I figure out who it is that's coming to my facility when I have this? This facility visit record is just an indicator that tells me someone had scanned in and come into my center, right? So from here, the easiest way to know if you can get the information you need for your report is to do a little walk. We're going to walk through the records in the system. And how do we do that? We look for these little links that are on your details section, and these are called lookups. And they basically, that's how Salesforce relates one record to another one. So when you click through them, you'll know these two things are related. And if they're related, then you can probably report on them. And when you're in a report, typically you are allowed up to 4 of these kind of relationships. Though you can kind of get around them in other ways, but I won't get into that topic. It's a little bit more advanced, but just to know, 4 is probably about where you want to go. Okay, so try to keep that in mind. You're looking at 4 different ways, and how you do it is you just kind of click through and go, okay, I got my facility visit. Well, I would like to know what kind of membership information they got, so I'm going to click on that membership. That kind of brings me to the membership record. And from there, well, I absolutely need to know who that person is. So I can see here, I have a contact and account, and I can click on that. So that's 3 so far, right? So I can get one more piece of information if I really wanted to, and I can get, well, maybe account name is pretty good too, right? So I can know a little bit more about where they live and kind of other information that's on the household that might be relevant to what I'm doing. So that gives us our 4 objects. And now the next step is to try to find a report type that's going to give me this kind of skeleton to start working from, making sure I have all the different objects that matter to me on that report. So to do that, we're just going to go over to our reports tab here. I got it open over here. And right from the get-go, it just gives you a list of any reports that you looked at, as well as different folders. And folders are definitely a great way to kind of organize your data, make sure, make heavy use of them. If you try not to have more than 40 or 50 reports in a single folder. At that point, you probably might need a subfolder in there or something, just kind of organize things a little bit better. But we're creating a new report. So we're going to start it from scratch here. And we're just going to click on this new report button. And this is where Salesforce is going to start asking you for a report type. And typically, report types are categorized. So if you know the categories, then you can click through it, and you'll notice that the report types I can choose changes. Gives me a kind of narrows it down a little bit more. But at the same time, they also give you a really great search option. And typically, how Salesforce by default names them is it just tells you what the object is, and what all the objects are in that report type in the name. Now, this isn't always easy because there's a limit to how many characters there are. So people look for creative ways to rename things. But Salesforce has introduced some new features, and I really wish I could show it to you live. Unfortunately, my org did not get updated during the update window that happened over the weekend. Some of you may have got it, so you can go in and play with it right away. But I'm at least going to show you kind of the screenshot of it, so we know what it does. One of the new features that they have is now when you click on a report, it'll also tell you who is created by, on all the objects that are in the report type. And that's super useful for you to say, oh, okay, that has all the objects I care about. Does it have all the ones that I need in there? And it's much easier than trying to figure it out by the name. It's really tough by the name, but now this is a new feature. It's coming. If you don't have it yet, just wait 1 or 2 more weeks. Salesforce is continuing to roll it out to all the different organizations over the next little while. So look forward to that if you don't have it yet. It's really, really awesome. And there's one more feature that they've added, and they call it a beta feature, which means it's something that you do need to enable, but it's also a really helpful and super useful tool. This also means as a beta feature, it also means it's coming soon. So not this release, but most likely. And I don't work for Salesforce, so I can't say exactly when they're going to bring it out, but I'm crossing my fingers that it's soon, because this one is even better because it lets you filter by the objects. You just type in the object that you want, and it filters all your reports by that object. So I can type in, I'm looking for a facility visit. I'm going to type that in, and then all my reports would filter by that. Oh, I really wish I could show it to you right now. I'm itching to use that feature as well, because that would save so much time. And so once these are out, make sure you make use of it. This is a beta feature, so it's something that your administrator would have to turn on if you wanted to try it ahead of time, but it will be coming. Typically, beta features do get released pretty soon after they are beta, so you might just have to wait a release or 2 for this one, but it's a super cool feature. Make sure these are, like we said earlier, right? Salesforce is always updating how they're doing reports, and these are some of the features that are already here or coming soon. But unfortunately, I don't have that handy feature, so I got to type by name, and I have to hope I have something that named about right for what I want. A little bit challenging. For any I know we have some administrators on here as well. Make sure you put a good name on there, because that's the only thing that can rely on right now when we're building reports until we get the new features, and then you can be have a little bit more fun and ease with that. So I know this is the one I created. This is the report type I'm going to use because it's one I created. And like I said, it doesn't have all the information I care about, but I ran out of space. So I had to shorten the name a little bit. But I know this is the one I want. So once you got that, I'm going to click on continue. And Salesforce will kind of just add a couple of fields in there and put some information. And you'll notice that right now I have no information on my report. Well, that's kind of strange. That's not a very useful report. I got nothing in here. So what's happened is that Salesforce by default adds 2 filters always to your report, and they'll try to do it in an intelligent way. So the first one is what they call the ownership. So on a lot of fields, there's an owner, and this field kind of tells you, lets you make it so that you're not looking at too many records, because so you're not kind of overburdening the system, and it makes sure your reports run faster. But in my case, if I'm looking at other people's scans, so I'd want all contacts in this case. So I'm going to apply that. I don't want to know everybody, right? Just not the people that are under me. The second part is they will always try to put a date filter on there, just kind of make the information more relevant. Well, and it was a nice try. Birthday in this year is probably not very useful when I'm looking at members and not having a lot of toddlers coming into my center right now. So I'm going to change that. And it's very easy to change. I can click on here and it'll give me a list of all the different date fields that are in this in the report. And I can choose any one of those. And I'm going to go by, and you can also type, you can type in here and I'll start doing it by letter. I'm going to choose scan in time, because that's when they swipe their card in the reader, and that'll tell me when it's going to go by. And here we have we have a date options. So we have different options for how we're going to choose the dates. And so you can choose custom and pick a specific date. So I can come in here and I can say, oh, well, let's go from the beginning of the year to date. Okay. But that means every time I run this report, it's always going to use these dates no matter what. And that's not always useful, because sometimes typically what I want to know is now, and maybe I want to compare it to the past, or look forward to the future by a certain number of months or years. And so Salesforce has done a really good job of giving us kind of these relative dates. And these relative dates just kind of always get refreshed every time you run the report. So you don't have to make a report for 2021, a report for 2022, a report for 2023. You can create one report with a relative date. And so here you got a lot of different options, really a lot of options. So maybe Marina, if you can explain some of these kind of your concepts in here to help people understand a little bit more.
Yeah, totally. So the dates in reports is a huge thing, right? How much data are we going to see? You don't want to see all the data from the beginning of time, right? That's just not going to be super helpful. So the relative dates by fiscal year. So a lot of us nonprofits are on a fiscal year that's from either July 1st to June 30th, or some other date that's not January 1st to December 1st. So when you have a fiscal year date of, hey, I just want to see what's happening this current fiscal year, that's a great one to have. If you can scroll down a little bit more, you can also bring it into quarters, and then you can do it into calendar years as well. So you could look at those 2 different views. So that's a really big differentiation. And just as a little tip and a little hint, fiscal years are set up by your administrator. You have control over those. So if you're ever getting started, you want to make sure that you put in the right fiscal year. There's a little trick in there where it kind of is backwards. So just keep an eye on the fiscal year features. But definitely, you want to always kind of narrow down the amount of information that you're seeing over time, especially when you start building.
That's right. Thank you so much. And I really love this one, the current and previous. Yeah. That's almost always in the past, I've always, can you compare it to last month? And every time I'd have to build a new report when I wasn't on Salesforce, and I was just constantly building these reports just for, changing that the date. Mm-hmm. And these are really great, and they're very commonly used date options that people have.
And just to really reinforce, using the relative dates versus hard-coded dates makes it so you don't have to keep making the same reports over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so here it's telling me what it's going to be when I run a report right now. So it's telling me, current and previous calendar year is going to be January 1st, 2021 to December 2022. That's awesome. And so once I've got that, and I'm going to click on the refresh button, see what happens here. Now I'm probably going to get some data. There we go. And then it's got some information that it's already kind of by default put into there. And these are fields I just added. But of course, we're going to go in and change it to get more relevant information. But there's one more trick about filters I want to add in. Sometimes you don't need, sometimes there are filters that you don't need now, but you might need later. You want to divide up your data a little bit more. So typically what I do is, if there is a filter or a field I know I'm going to probably want to slice my data by that later, not right now, or sometimes I want to, slice my data by that. I don't need to build a whole new report for that. What I can do is I can add the filter ahead of time, and I'm going to do it by type, record type. And the reason why I'm using record type is because for membership, we either have the punch passes or we have the regular monthly memberships, right? And so sometimes I want to know the difference between the two. And so here you can have the options. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose all. I'm going to use all of them. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I don't want to filter by it right now. So by choosing all, I get everything. But later on, and you'll see the reason why we do this later, and just keep this in the back of your mind a little bit until we kind of get a little bit further along. So I'm going to apply that. This filter doesn't do anything, but it's going to be really valuable for us later. So it adds it in here. I should also mention the other part is that you can lock it. It means that no one can change it afterwards. So that's just kind of if there's a filter you always want on there, then you can use that. So now I've got my filters in, and I'm going to start looking at the information that I want. So like I said, I probably want to know some of my contact information, right? I'm going to add in, maybe I want to know the zip code. So I'm going to add in their postal code here. I also want to know, like I said, their age category. And this is just a formula field I created, to divide up all the different ages in the system in a way that's kind of a little bit more interesting to me. But instead of putting it here, I actually wanted to group by it. So this means that I want to know the information by the age group. So I'm going to add it here. And if I refresh this, so you're going to see here now it's kind of divided them up. So I got my age category of adults, and then you probably notice I only getting 20, and that's not because I don't have a lot of data in my system. It's because Salesforce limits the number of records you see while you're building your report, just to make that just helps it to run faster. So if you don't see everything that you expect to see here, it's okay. That's expected. You'd have to click on this run button or the save and run button in order to see all your data and kind of validate that your filters are right. So typically, as long as you can see some records here, you're fine. Continue adding in all the fields that you want, and then figure out if your filters are right afterwards, because you're gonna have to run your report to know if everything that you care about is in there. So the other part
I'm going to add one more point about groupings for those of you who are very common and used to Excel. Groupings in reports act very much like pivot tables when you build the rows and columns in pivot tables. So if you're used to working in Excel and grouping things that way, then you're going to really like how it works in Salesforce. There is a limit. You can't do as many groupings as you can in Excel, but you can get pretty much there. And again, if you start grouping that far down into things, then you probably want to rethink how you're grouping stuff and what information that you're showing. But just so that you can translate that knowledge between different applications, think of this like big pivot tables with live data.
And quickly before we move on, and Marina, we've got a great question from Jasper in the chat. Is there an easy way to filter by time of day?
Time of day specifically for facility visits?
I'm guessing yes.
Yes. So we have there's an hour of the day field on here. So if I really wanted to filter it, unfortunately, it's not a pick list value. So you'd have to type in all the ones that you care about. It's a lot of typing right now, so I'm not going to do it. But yes, this literally is by the hour. So I think it's on uses military time. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 12, 13, 14, 15. So you can just type that in here, and that's going to give you, and you can, once again, because of the flexibility of it, you can always come in here and kind of bucket that in different ways as well. So maybe we can try doing that as well. I know I'm going off script at this point, but that's all right.
I remember
So I'm going to
Maria,
add the,
Just had a
There's a
really
couple of
great-
ways.
yeah, I remember that the JCCSF had a really great facility usage report. I remember seeing that in the sandbox.
So you could either make sure that there's a grouping field on the record itself that you would create different buckets, which then makes it a little bit easier to filter on. You can group dates and times by buckets in the reports themselves. So this is a great question to get to. What is it that you want to see by these times of day? And then you decide whether you need to create that as a data point within the record itself, or if it's a reporting feed, like if it's a reporting point that you want to do in a report itself.
So these numbers are a little bit weird. So I'm going to just bucket them. That'll probably tell you a little bit more. So everything kind of is going to the actual hour. So I can say, well, all these ones here, I can add it to a bucket, and I'm going to say everything. There's a lot of clicking, but that's all right. And I can add it to a bucket. So typically you want to add a bucket, for example, I can say morning. And I can add another one for afternoon.
While you're adding that bucket, another way you could do this is that you could say in your filters, I want to know morning, which is less than, right? So one of those operators that you can do in filters is that time of day less than, I'd have to remember all of my 11:59 a.m. or 11:59, depending on, I think it's in military time. So so that's the beauty of reports, right? Is there's many ways to group your data and segment it and create these buckets.
So this is a little bit
Tom's going the old school way here.
I am. So a little bit time consuming, but yeah, so I can move it into the bucket, and you can see here, it kind of pops it into it here. There are, like I said, multiple ways that we can do this. I don't think I can do a filter on this one specifically right here. I'd have to do it elsewhere. But yes, I can do that, and I can filter each one of these. The other way I could do it is I can create, if your data is, you can also create a new field that will do that bucketing for you. And then it's visible on the record, and that might be sometimes more useful as well. So that's another way you can do it instead of kind of coming here and manually adding it in, or like I said, using the filters, because sometimes you want to use it outside of a report. And then if you need it outside of a report, that's when you would also create it as a field, so they can do it in other ways.
A field like that would be helpful in a list view.
It would be, yeah, exactly. So that's how we would do it in that way. So this one's, it's gonna take a little while for me to bucket it. So instead of doing that, I'm gonna put in by month, because I also, not by month. And I also want to put in by the scan in time. And then just also shows you another feature when you're dealing with dates, because it's really easy to bucket dates as well. So by default, you'll notice I just kind of individually, each of the days are in here one by one. But we have a really easy way to come in here and Salesforce gives us a way to group them. So super easy, right?
And again, these relative and these date filters are consistent either in when you're choosing filters or you're grouping dates by these buckets. So you really don't have to remember all of the different ways. Know the difference between a calendar month and a fiscal year, and you're probably good to go.
That's right. So I'm going to filter it by the month, or I group it by the month. So if I refresh that, now it's much easier. So I got my March, my April, and then it's got my category, my age category down here. And also add another one. I can add my membership category in here as well. So if I refresh that, it's going to tell me, okay, so far I have the ones that are community plus, and I have 18 here and 2 here. Like I said, we'll see more data when we run it. The other part that down here, it always gives me kind of all the details of all the records. And this is kind of optional. You can hide it. So if I click on that, it kind of just disappears and you just get the chart. Or if I really want to see it. Now, you don't have to decide now whether you want it on or off. This is kind of like a default for the report. It can be changed when you're running it. So I'm just going to turn it off just because it's a lot of data, right? But I'm just going to continue making sure I have the fields that I care about. So I've got the name, and I'm going to put in their actual page as well. And I'm going to put in, that's probably a good amount of information. So the other thing with that is anytime you put in a number field in here, Salesforce gives you the option of how you want to summarize that information. So any number field it would work. So I'm going to choose average because that probably makes the most sense for this one. If we're talking about age, I probably don't want to add up all the ages. That wouldn't really give me a lot of information, but average age might be interesting for me to know in terms of like kind of like the people that are coming in. Gives me a little bit more detail about the category instead of just like looking at it.
And you can select multiple of those categories as well, which is good too, right?
So yeah, so I could have selected max as well.
Yeah, it's not just one or the other. You can have them all in there.
That's true. But for this one, I'm just going to choose that one. So now we got everything in there. The next thing we're going to do is just kind of like another way we can visualize the information in here is by using a chart. So I can click on the add a chart button and you'll notice that my chart appears. And that's simply because I got to click on the refresh button because Salesforce changed something about my report, but it won't show up right away. And when you notice this big gray, when it kind of grays it out like this, that means that Salesforce had made a change and the information that you have in there is probably no longer relevant. And you probably should refresh it if you really want to see how it looks like. So I'm going to refresh this. Now a big chart in here. And this isn't the only chart type I have. I have a ton of different options in here. And Marina, what are kind of some of the ways that you decide which chart type to use?
Yeah, so typically when you're grouping things together like this, you'd pick one of the bars, vertical or horizontal. If you're doing things over time, you typically want a horizontal bar. If you're grouping things like categories, you want type of a vertical bar. I don't use a lot of the scatter plots. I haven't seen a lot of use cases for those. The stacked ones are really nice when you want to kind of show differences in categories, and lines and donuts and funnels. Those are just kind of fun. One thing you want to do is you kind of, as you build your report, is you want to test out the different chart types as well, because some show up better than others and they give you different options. So it's all about practicing. And then before you think you're done, try something a little bit different. And I want to make a note here that sometimes people will refer to these as dashboards as well. Dashboards themselves also have charts and graphs on them. So again, it's that multiple way that we can deliver information to people really quickly. Sometimes you don't need a whole dashboard. Sometimes you just need a report with a chart on it. And you can deliver those to people as well. You can subscribe to those as well. So specifically things like facility visits over time or memberships. You may not need a full dashboard for things because you're only answering one question.
Cool. And so I'm going to choose a stacked one because I wanted to know kind of like across the months and how it's working, but I also want to divide it up by my categories. So that's why I've chosen a stacked one in this case. So I get my table, I still get my pivot table down here, and now I'll also have my chart up here. Like I said, I think I'm pretty good on this one. I think I'm ready to kind of run it and see how it's going to look like with full data. Now, I probably should have saved it at some point because you don't want to lose your work along the way. If this is a report you want to keep, you definitely want to save it. I should have saved it earlier. That was my bad.
Save early and save often, right? This is not an auto save type of work.
I'm going to save it now. So I'm going to call this one.
What do you want the headline to be?
Yeah, I know. Like,
this month's facility visits are great.
To your facility. Oh, I'm out of room. That might be a bit too clickbaity. So
check this out. Something like that. Yeah, great.
Here's coming to our center.
Nice.
There we go. Right. So I framed it as a question, right? There is a limit to how much space you get. So that's why I kind of had to do that. Oh, I did forget one thing. When you're saving, you also get to choose what folder it goes into. And by default, it goes into your private folder. And your private folder, only you have access to. So if it's a report that just you are going to run, no problem. You can add it into your private folder, right? But if you're planning to share it to other people, most likely you'll want to kind of choose a folder that you're going to put it into. In this case, I'm going to put this into my dashboard reports instead. right? Because I want to make sure I can, everyone who runs the dashboard later on will have access to this report as well. So I'm just going to put it into there. All right, and you'll notice that we have tons more data compared to earlier. So here we have, well, I don't really care about average age. Let me change. And here's one of the cool things about the report is that after you run it, you can still make lots of changes to it without actually editing. And these are a kind of, I would call them temporary changes. They're just for while you're doing it right now, and the system will forget them later on when it gets refreshed, right? So I actually don't want to go by average age. That's a weird one. I just want to count, and I want the scan in time. There we go. That's better. Okay, so now I'm going by month, and I don't know why this is here. Because I filtered it by the time, so I'll have to double check on that one. But here I got my months, and then I have a stack of the categories, the types of memberships that people are using. So most of them are coming across as the Community Plus membership. I can also change it and come in and set it by category. I want to go by age category because that's what we're really interested in, right? So I split out by, my adults, my youths, and my teens, and I say, oh, you know what? Teens aren't really coming here. I probably should do something about that. Figure out why they're not coming into my center and why I don't have any seniors this last couple of months. So, am I missing something in my facility that's going to attract them, or this now I have like information that I can act on and do things, and that's going to help me to make decisions, right? So down below here, it's got my chart, and the other thing I can do is I can also show my details in here. So I can come back in, this comes back in here, or I can hide it, right? And the other thing I can do is clicking on these ones will actually filter out this part, and it will also filter out my details. So if I want to go into details about a specific area, I can click on it, and all of this information will update with that. So it's really powerful for you to drive into the details of your data on the spot without having to build a brand new report for it, right? There's a lot of flexibility. And so you notice if I refresh this, what's going to happen is that, before I refresh, I'm going to do one more thing. So when we talk about the filters, so when you run your report, you can also change the filters as well. So here I can say, I'm only concerned about, I only care about last year. I can change the filter here for last year. And remember that one that I added in. So you can't add a new filter, but you can change an existing filter. And that's why I added this one in here previously. I can now come in here and say, no, I don't want everything. I just want, I just want to know about my punch passes.
And this is important because you don't want other people changing the reports. So you can go in and change these filters. You have to edit the report, but you don't want everybody changing the report on the fly. So it allows them the flexibility to do it for themselves at that point in time and not break the underlying report or create a new underlying report.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So I'm going to apply that. I'm probably going to get nothing in here. Oh, I got a little bit. I got some punch passes. All right. So the other thing that I can do, like I said, everything that I've been doing on this screen, I haven't been doing it through an edit. So I haven't been changing the actual report. I've been just changing what my view of it is right now. So when I refresh this, everything would go back to the way it was originally. So if I click refresh up here, I will lose all my changes. So don't do that unless you're ready to reset everything back. You'll notice that things go back to the way it was, right? Exactly how it was. I had it previously. And that allows you kind of like to muck around a little bit with it, at the same time, preserve your report, right? You can say, hey, everybody, I got this awesome report. Don't change it. I'm not going to let you change it, but you can make some small adjustments to it to see the data that you want to see and in the way that you want to see. So this really reduces the number of reports you need to make. And we're running out of time here, so I gotta go a little bit faster. But I need to one more thing, really important thing is that you can also subscribe to a report. And that's super important. That basically lets you send an email on a schedule, right? So if you wanted to say, hey, I wanted to collect, at the first of the month or at, the last day of the month, I want to know exactly kind of like a good snapshot. And you don't want someone to have to run in on the weekends to kind of run that report for you on the weekend so that you get that nice snapshot exactly at the right time. And what you can do here is instead is you can set it up so that it's going to email you the report itself. So this can come in, you can choose it, give it to me daily, weekly, monthly. I can choose multiple days a week that it's going to run on, or I can go monthly and then can choose like according to first, second, third, fourth, or last day of the month, or I can say, always on a specific, day of the week. So there's a lot of really good options for you. The most important part is here. You can choose formatted report and details only. And what's the difference? I'll come back and you can also set who gets the report as well, right? So you can say, I want to send it not just to myself, I also wanted to send it to Steph because she's probably interested in this as well.
This is a really great example of something Marina touched on previously about dashboards and executives who aren't necessarily going to the system all the time, but really want that kind of snapshot view of how the center is doing. So to schedule that every Monday, they come to the office and they kind of get that full view of how the center is doing.
Yeah. So when I was talking about kind of the formatted and report and details view, and that's what this is. So this part here is the formatted view. This is what it will get emailed to you. The details view is just this
the
part.
Line item detail, record level detail.
Yeah. So you get either one of these views emailed to you, depending on what you want to do. This is great for exporting out and kind of turning it into another system. If to kind of collate more data, this is great for just kind of visualizing exactly what you got. Now, the last feature we got here is the ability to add this to a dashboard, which is really cool. So I can come in here and say, oh, I got my report the way I want it, so I'm going to add it to a dashboard. And typically, I recommend you can also go from the dashboard to add the report. But I find that most people have way more reports than they have dashboards. So it's easier to find a dashboard than it is to find a report. So and I can make a new dashboard from here as well, or I can add it to an existing one, right? So I think I had a facility, single location facility dashboard. So I can click on that one, right? And I can add it to here. And by default, it's gonna, and it just kind of gives me some of the information in here. And I can actually override the settings on here. So I can come in here and say, I know the report does it by this, but I actually wanted to run it by this instead. So I'm going to just quickly change a few things here. Whoops. That should be scan time, and this should be category. There you go.
A dashboard's a good way to show those different slices and different views from the same report. You don't have to build a new report for each one of these little components on a dashboard. You can use the same report and slice and dice the data from the same report into a dashboard. So again, you're not building 14 reports, you're building one dashboard with 14 different versions of that data in that single report.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And so here you can see a collection of lots of different reports and kind of data elements on here. Typically, they're usually either charts or large number of formats. You can also put in the actual details, but it's a lot of information to take in when you have so many fields, right? So my report that I created got added to the very bottom. But I can move this report around and kind of you can follow it just as long as it snaps to these squares, you can move it anywhere you want, right? And Salesforce will try to reorganize it. It's really powerful how you can set it, right? I can change the size of it. I can make it wider. I can make it narrower. I can make it taller.
You can change the schemes, the patterns and the color schemes.
Yeah. So really so many, and you can see, oh, this one's a really pretty one, right? So here's the visitors by hour one, right? So this is exactly the report we were talking about earlier. So it's already actually built in as one of our standard reports. So you can come in here and see kind of what this by the hour of the day and also by the day of the week. What's the trend of how people are coming into your facility? So it's pretty cool, right? A lot of flexibility in what you can build. And I do want to save some time for some of the other parts, so I'm going to stop here. I think that's unless Marina, anything you want to add about kind of like the dashboards here before we kind of jump into some of the other dashboard things? Yeah,
I can't stress enough that it takes practice, right? And it takes playing around and having that kind of dedicated mindset that I'm gonna see what I can do. Because again, this is in your wheelhouse, right? This is not sending it to another department. This is out of the box functionality that anyone who has access to information in Salesforce can do this kind of stuff.
Totally, Marina. And to your point, it's constant learning and it's constantly innovating and it's attending Salesforce user groups, Traction Rec user groups. Like there's so much information to absorb out there. And again, your learning will never be stagnant. It'll be forever ongoing.
My happy Friday is like 2 hours where I just play with reports and dashboards, and I still do that consistently. So showing off a number of different ways, right? So Salesforce is also mobile friendly. So again, for those executives that we need to send information to, make them a pretty dashboard, send it to them. They can see it on their phones. They can see it on their tablets. Love it. It'll keep them busy. All sorts of different ways to do validations, right? So you can have your validation, so your personal routines, so collections or month-end reports, or just any sort of validations, data validations. Some of the ones that have come up in the past, and I love the concept of the Xero Dashboard, right? It's your control, your command and control center that you get to go in and you're the master of all of the information there, and you can refresh things and you go, look, this person didn't do their stuff, so we need to follow up on that. Or, Hong, when you showed that report and there was some broken data in there, well, look, it isolates that information so that we can actually do validation by exception, and we can see where problems are, and then we can address the issue itself instead of just fixing information or saying that the data is bad. So we want to get to that point where we have confidence in our data. And the way we do that is through using reports and dashboards. If you export that information out all the time and do it just in Excel, you lose that ability to update that information in real time and build that confidence. It is a learning process. It is different. But once it sticks and once you get in there, it's the most powerful out-of-the-box tool that there is available in Salesforce, regardless of what application you're using.
Totally. We have a great question here, Hong. I saw you were typing it, but maybe we just answer it live.
Yeah, that might be quicker.
Awesome. So this is a great question for YMCA as well, multiple locations. So we would need these reports by not a facility, but by all our data in our entire association.
Yeah. So once again, it's as long as you follow those links, right, that we walk through when you go record by record, and location is one of those records, right? So you can link by, but remember, by default, Salesforce can let you report on everything. And it's up to you to kind of narrow it down to a smaller subset if you want to. So, yes, you can always report by everything, but you want to kind of just narrow specific.
The more trainings you do, and then when you get into filtering on dashboards themselves, is the YMCA of San Francisco has done a fantastic job doing that. That was something I learned here, was that you can build filters on tops of dashboards. So if all your data for all of your locations is sitting in your one Salesforce org, you can then put a filter on the dashboard. I don't think we have a good example, but that would be more of an advanced training too. Let's get the basics in there first. But the answer is yes. And for most of the questions that you have, the answer is probably yes.
Yes.
It just might take some creative solutioning to figure out, is it better building a field that I need to group information on from a record itself? Is a piece of information missing? Or can I do it in a dashboard by filtering, or reports, or other sort of those relative dates or other options there? And then when you get to dashboards, the filters on dashboards, that takes some practice, but man, are those cool.
Any other questions? Feel free to come off mute while we wait on the topic of, I guess, resources and training. We will send a follow-up of some incredible resources and links for you all. Salesforce Ben, Trailheads. If you haven't heard of Trailheads, that's a hand slap. We got to get on that, because again, constantly learning. But we also have our Traction Rec user conference coming up next week. So this is just a little teaser. We've got Marina presenting an incredible session on finance reporting, which is everyone's favorite.
Another one of my favorite topics.
It is. And we go way deeper than we did today. Lots of good meat there. I'm sure Hong's presenting as well, but there's some incredible sessions for customers, prospects, anyone to attend next week. So please follow up with us if you're interested in joining. We'd love to see you all there.
And practice.
And practice.
Go home and practice.
That is the biggest.
Totally. And also on the topic of resources is There's a Facebook group for Traction Rec and Salesforce users. Marina is an avid attendee and participant of that, where I've seen some incredible just knowledge sharing. And, you know, our community here at Traction Rec is so willing to jump in and help anyone. So especially when it comes to reporting and analytics, because it's such a large topic. So amazing. All right. Cindy, you're interested? We will sign you up. I gotcha. What's
one last question about building a field? Yes, that would be something advanced, and it's something your assistant administrator would have.
Oh, Chris, you and I can chat. I'll let you know that. I gotcha. We got lots of fun things we can work on.
Oh yeah. Beautiful. Awesome. Okay, we're 2 minutes over. We'll let everyone go. Thank you so much for attending. We appreciate it. We will send follow-ups and the recording out shortly. Beautiful. Thanks, Marina. Thanks, Hong. That was fantastic.
Thank you
so much. We had a lot of
Everyone,
fun.
take care.
Bye.